February 19th, 1945. The beaches of Iwo Jima. Japanese gunner Tokushi Yamada watched through the slit of his concrete pillbox as Marines poured onto the black sand. He smiled. His men had 11 miles of tunnels, 600 reinforced bunkers. Every approach was covered by machine guns. The Americans would die on that beach. Then he heard it. A sound unlike anything he'd heard before. Not rifles. Not mortars. A roar. 500 rounds per minute tearing through the air. His smile vanished. The pillbox next to him exploded. Then another. Someone was coming. Yamada had fought in China. He'd seen American weapons. But this Marine wasn't carrying standard equipment. This Marine had built something new. Something terrifying. And in the next 4 hours, this one man would destroy position after position while every Japanese gun on the beach tried to stop him. His name was Tony Stein. He was 23 years old, a toolmaker from Dayton. And he'd brought a weapon the Japanese had never seen before. Before I tell you what that weapon was, hit that subscribe button. Because what I'm about to tell you is absolutely crazy, and there's tons more stories like this on the channel. This is the story of how one Marine with a homemade gun changed everything on the bloodiest beach in the Pacific, and why the Japanese couldn't kill him no matter how hard they tried. Tony Stein wasn't supposed to be a hero. He dropped out of high school, worked in a factory, barely scraped by during the Depression. His parents were Jewish immigrants from Europe. They'd fled to America to escape violence. Now their son was heading straight into it. He joined the Marines in September 1942, 21 years old. Average everything. Average height. Average skills. Nobody special. The Marines sent him to the Paramarines. Elite troops trained to jump behind enemy lines. But the Paramarines never jumped into combat. Instead they fought through the jungle. Guadalcanal. Bougainville. Brutal island fighting. That's where Stein learned something important. Standard Marine weapons weren't good enough. During a patrol on Bougainville, Stein found a wrecked Navy dive bomber. The plane was destroyed, but the guns were still there. Two .30 caliber machine guns mounted in the rear seat. Aircraft guns. They were called the AN/M2. Stein had an idea. He was a toolmaker. He knew machines. These guns fired 1,200 rounds per minute. 4 times faster than anything Marines carried. They were also lighter than ground machine guns. 30% lighter. But they had a problem. They were designed for aircraft. They had handles for aerial gunners. No stock. No sights. No way for a man on the ground to use them. Stein got to work. He took parts from other weapons. A wooden stock from an M1 Garand rifle. A bipod from a Browning automatic rifle. Sights from a bar. A trigger mechanism he built himself. He welded. He modified it. He tested. When he was done, he had something unique. A machine gun that weighed 25 pounds. That fired 1,200 rounds per minute. That one man could carry and aim. His buddies saw it work. They were amazed. His commanders saw it work. They told him to make more. Stein built 5 more guns. They gave 1 to each rifle platoon. The 6th went to Stein. They called it the Stinger, because when it fired, it had quite a sting. Nobody knew it yet, but Stein had just built the weapon that would save dozens of Marines on the worst beach in World War II. February 19th, 1945. Iwo Jima. The Marines hit the beach at 9 a.m. First wave. Second wave. Third wave. For 30 minutes, the Japanese didn't fire. They waited. The beaches were filled with men, equipment, vehicles. Thousands of Marines packed onto black volcanic sand. Then the Japanese opened up. Artillery, mortars, machine guns, all at once. Marines dove for cover. But there was no cover. Just loose ash that swallowed your boots. A 15-foot terrace they couldn't climb. Nowhere to hide. Men fell everywhere. The Marines were pinned. Tony Stein hit that beach in the first wave. He carried the Stinger. 100 rounds of ammo in a metal box. His shoes. His helmet. That's it. He moved forward. Ahead of him, His platoon was stuck, pinned down by a complex of pillboxes, concrete bunkers, steel doors, gun slits too small to hit, machine guns firing through those slits. Marines couldn't advance, couldn't retreat. Every time someone moved, Japanese guns cut them down. Stein didn't wait for orders. He stood up, in full view of the enemy. Every Japanese gun in range turned toward him. The Stinger roared, 1,200 rounds per minute, 20 rounds per second. The sound was incredible. Marines around him heard it over the entire battle. Japanese guns went silent. One pillbox, then another. Stein charged forward while firing. Got close. 15 yards. 10 yards. Rolled flame from his muzzle straight into the gun slits. The positions went dark. His platoon moved forward, but the Stinger ate ammunition. 100 rounds lasted seconds. Stein ran out fast. He kicked off his boots, threw down his helmet, ran back to the beach, 200 yards across open ground. Japanese bullets everywhere. He grabbed fresh ammo, saw a wounded Marine, threw the man over his shoulder, carried him back, turned around, loaded the Stinger, charged forward again. He did this 8 times. 8 times running through that hell. Each time carrying a wounded man. Each time returning to fight. Twice the Stinger was shot out of his hands. Twice he picked it up and kept going. Japanese gunners aimed at him specifically. They saw what he was doing. They knew he had to die, but they couldn't hit him. Every time they exposed themselves to shoot, the Stinger found them first. By the end of the first day, Stein had destroyed 8 Japanese positions, killed at least 20 enemy soldiers, saved 8 wounded Marines, opened a path through the defenses that hundreds of Marines used to push inland. His company commander watched it happen. He couldn't believe it. Neither could anyone else. One man, with a homemade weapon, against the most fortified beach in the Pacific. The Japanese had spent a year preparing those defenses. They thought they were unstoppable. Tony Stein proved them wrong in one afternoon. 4 days later, the Marines raised the flag on Mount Suribachi. That famous photo. Stein was there. He'd helped capture the mountain. But he got wounded in the fighting. Shrapnel in his shoulder. They evacuated him to a hospital ship. His war could have ended there. Nobody would have blamed him. He'd already done enough for 10 men. But then Stein heard his regiment was taking heavy casualties. Fighting for Hill 362A. Brutal combat. Men dying. His friends. His brothers. Stein got out of his hospital bed. Left the ship. Went back to the island. March 1st, 1945. 10 days after the landing. Stein was leading a 19-man patrol. They were trying to locate a machine gun nest. The gun had his company pinned down. Men were dying. Stein moved forward carefully. The island was different now. Not the beach anymore. Broken ground. Rocks. Caves everywhere. He knew the Japanese were close. He just couldn't see them. Then a shot. A sniper. 1 bullet. Stein fell. He died instantly. 23 years old. His war was over. Back on that first day, Japanese gunner Yamada survived. His pillbox wasn't one Stein destroyed. But he saw what happened. He watched positions fall. Heard that terrible sound of the Stinger. Saw Marines flood through gaps that shouldn't have existed. After the battle, American intelligence interviewed Japanese prisoners. They asked about American weapons. The prisoners talked about flamethrowers, about tanks, about naval guns. But they also talked about one Marine, one gun, a sound they'd never heard before, a weapon that came out of nowhere. They called it a demon gun. They were terrified of it. America's advantage in World War II wasn't just numbers. It was an innovation. Soldiers who saw problems and fixed them. Men like Tony Stein who wouldn't accept that the weapons they had weren't good enough. The Stinger was never an official weapon. The Marine Corps never ordered it. Never tested it. Never approved it. It was made by one Marine with tools and spare parts. But it worked. And on the worst day of the worst battle in Marine Corps history, it saved lives. That's American ingenuity. That's what won the war. Not just factories and ships and planes. But individual Americans refused to quit. Figuring out solutions. Making the impossible work. Tony Stein received the Medal of Honor, presented to his widow 1 year after the battle. February 19, 1946. She stood in the Ohio State House. The governor was there. An admiral tied the medal around her neck. She was 24 years old. A widow, but proud, because her husband had died a hero. The citation listed everything. The 8 trips to the beach. The wounded men he saved. The enemy positions he destroyed. The fearless courage under fire. What it didn't say was simpler. Tony Stein was just a regular guy who did extraordinary things. A high school dropout who thought the Japanese military. A factory worker who built a weapon that changed a battle. America produced over 300,000 aircraft in World War II. Over 86,000 tanks. Millions of rifles. Billions of bullets. But some of the most important weapons never came from factories. They came from minds like Tony Stein's. Men who saw what needed to be done and did it. The Japanese couldn't stop him. Not with concrete bunkers. Not with machine guns. Not with a year of preparation. One Marine with a homemade weapon broke through their defenses. That's the story of how we won the war. Not just with more, but with better. With smarter. With soldiers who wouldn't accept no for an answer. Thanks for watching. Next time we're covering another weapon the enemy never expected. Something even crazier than the Stinger. You won't believe what these guys came up with. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. And if you like this story, check out our video on the Marine who cleared 16 bunkers with just a flamethrower. It's just as insane. See you next time.